welcome Joey McCoy.
Hello. Hello, everybody. So, how many people here actually, how many grow Texas natives in your yard for bonsai? Okay, is there anybody that doesn't right now? Just has, okay, it's a few. I mean, that's great. I am a huge admirer on ficus and tropical species, on imported traditional species like maple and pine and juniper and things like that as well. But I just think that we have this fantastic assortment of plants all around the state, which I've sort of been diving into over the past couple decades, and maybe I'll show you guys a few new ones that maybe you haven't seen before. We have a huge state, as everybody knows, which is divided into fantastic different zones of all sorts of different species. And I'm going to be basically breaking the state up into what you can find in different areas. Some of them overlap, of course, and some trees are found over the whole state, but just for ease and ease of my mind, I've arranged them. But the interesting thing about our state is, you know, we range from zone 6, which is really cold, all the way to tropics. You can find all sorts of things in between. So, you know, keep in mind that if you don't see something just outside your back door, travel a little further. Let's start with the Texas Hill Country. Rolling hills, lots of broadleaf trees, a little bit of evergreen with a few of them that we'll talk about in a minute. So we're starting with the most ubiquitous one in Austin, at least, would be the cedar elm and the southern hackberry. And I had a cedar elm to bring with me, and it didn't make it in the car. And it was one I was going to have a discussion about chops and how we can, yeah. Oh, on this one, yes, on the live oak. Well, the cedar elm was a more interesting discussion, but it unfortunately didn't make it. I realized after I'd driven away. But for most people in Texas, they've either tried a cedar elm, as John has over here, or have bought a cedar elm or admired a cedar elm. That is kind of our staple, right? I mean, most people seem to have one. Fantastic species, rough bark, small leaves, small, kind of a rough shark's tooth kind of texture to the leaves as well. Pretty easy to collect, great fall color. What a lot of people don't use are the hackberry for some reason. The laser pointer doesn't seem to work, but on the screen. I am a big fan of our southern hackberry. So Is
that the sugar hackberry?
It is also called a sugarberry, yes. I've raced ahead because, you know, technology gets me flummoxed. Let's go back to cedar elm for just a moment. For those of you who grow them and love them, this isn't going to be a surprise, but for other people, they grow what's called wings. So on the bark, they will make a flattened wing shape on each side. That only happens on rapidly growing plants as they're expanding and filling in. Young plants or plants that have been cut and regrowth, you don't have that on the ends of bonsai that have been grown slowly. Older branches, or just slow-growing branches. Usually shaded branches won't have them either. It's fine to have. You don't have to remove them. But don't expect that to stay on all of your mature trees. You're just not going to have it. You may have some pieces later on, but to those people who think that it's just going to be this wingy type of a plant, it's not going to look like that. But they're fantastic. It grows as a result of a way for the plant to protect young stems from breaking in the wind. So it basically stiffens shoots. So it's an interesting adaptation. And you're welcome also to open the bag there if anybody hasn't felt of the texture of a cedar elm leaf. Lots of fun. Southern hackberry, sugarberry as well. Here is one that was growing in my neighbor's yard. And it has some sugar berries on there, by the way, and if anybody feels adventurous and wants to taste one, they are sweet.
When do you collect those?
For bonsai?
Yeah, when do you pull them off the ground?
All broadleaf trees.
February?
End of winter, beginning of, yeah, before they bud out, basically. You want to collect them when they're naked? Yes.
Oh, finishing off.
Not when I'm naked, but when the trees are naked. Yes, Ryan.
Joey, in your interpretation of Texas natives,
Yes.
are you including absolute Texas natives?
I'm
Or
trying.
Are you including trees that may have imported in here and they're growing just substantially and they're great? What is your terminology for tonight's case?
So I'm going by native, the ones that are from here.
Okay.
There's plenty of plants that are not on my list
Adopted.
that, yes, that are growing fantastic. Either they're not an invasive, they just happen to be a nice tree that you find occasionally.
Yopon holly is an adapted plant.
Yopon is native to the east side.
Depends on which one you talk about. The ones that like Rockport and that, those are the Friday Easter.
Well,
And they're about 40 years old.
we'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah, there are planted ones as well, because everything doesn't have to be growing in the wild. But I mean, there's plants like Chinese tallow, which is a great thing in the landscape. Doesn't live very long. People think are an invasive. I think it's just kind of made its way. I don't include those.
The ash junipers are not native.
Ash junipers are. Yes, there is a big thing about that, and we can get to that a little bit, but there's a lady I've been speaking with who's writing the book on ash juniper, and we're kind of working back and forth. Yes, Karen?
I have a question specifically about the hackberry.
Sure.
I do have some awesome big hackberry.
Mm-hmm.
I've not dug them up because they like to be super close to the oaks.
Yes.
And so how much root do you need to harvest with the hackberry to have it survive? Because I don't want to hurt the oak. And they're literally, anytime I see a good one, it's like...
Yeah, that's really hard. Any plant that you're going to collect, the collectability of them has to be a big consideration. And I've had some of the big yopons that I was going to collect out of a friend's yard, but they were intertwined in oak roots as well. And the only way I could get them out was to basically saw a hole in the oak roots and then try to pull it out. You're going to be harming probably your oaks, probably the hackberry, maybe killing the hackberry in the process. So if they're really locked in, either it's rocks or roots like that, if you can air layer or ground layer, that's a really good way to do it. So you do a ring and you regrow some roots above the root system. So it takes longer, but if it's in your yard, you can keep it watered. Yeah, if it's in the park, you're kind of different situation. That's right. I said nothing. But our southern hackberry is a great tree. This is one of them right here. They reduce really nicely. I've never had one reduce quite this much as it has this year. I think it may be a little bit due to our heat stress as well. But I mean, I've had them healthily growing little bitty leaves for a lot of years, whereas in that bag, wherever it goes around here, that was coming off my neighbor's tree that was kind of hanging down. I've never found the sugar berries on bonsai. Maybe I'm pruning them off. Maybe there's something happening. It's just, I've never seen it in a pot. So that's...
How long did it take you to get the leaf size everything?
It depends on the plant, but once you're in refinement, the refinement period, I would say within 2 or 3 years, of consistently keeping the branches in check from really expanding and then taking out the largest leaves each time. So, I'm sorry?
You're keeping them in partial shade or full sun?
Full sun when it's not screaming hot. This summer, partial shade. And then when we were in days and days, as you know, or weeks, months of the screaming heat, it was in deep shade. So I put most of my broadleaf trees in a deep shade. They just couldn't take it. They defoliated themselves if I didn't mess with them, so it was not happy. Hackberries, so both broadleaf plants, both in the elm family. Cedar elm will heal over wounds really well. Southern hackberry will not. So anything you cut that's a large wound on it, you're going to be stuck with for the rest of its life, or your life, or whatever you have. So you have to make peace with it, or you have to disguise it, or you have to do some, enhance it. Yeah, you make something. So anyhow.
The leaves of a hackberry have a kind of a sweet, the dogs love to eat hackberry.
Do they? Well, maybe they're going for the sweet berries and they're going for the leaves.
No, it's the leaves. They're the leaves. If you eat them, you can, there's a bit of sugar in them.
Well, I've never tasted a leaf, so.
Well, I wanted to know what the dogs were doing.
The other ones that are just, I'm thinking Austin, the most common that you'll find is southern live oak and then the ash juniper. These are the ones that dominate the landscape. A lot of people don't go after the southern live oaks for some reason. They think of them as being picky and finicky and they're difficult to collect or difficult to keep. I've found them to be very happy in a pot. As long as you work on the roots in the right time of year, they're not a problem. The best time to work on them, because it is a live oak and an evergreen, is the 2-week window when they finally defoliate in February, I believe, March, depending on the year, late February, early March. It's best time to collect them, best time to do the root work as well. You have this kind of, you know, run, they're ready. So, you do it right after they've lost their leaves, before the new ones come out, is the best time. If you can do it before that happens, it's still okay because those old leaves are coming off anyway. It's kind of scary because you do a repot and it loses all its leaves and you think you've killed your plant, but you haven't.
Well, the little buds are popping out.
Yeah, just like any of the broadleaf plants. When you see the buds swelling, it's the time to do it.
Yeah, I've tried January and early February, and I've had no success.
That's a great time to kill them.
It is.
Yeah, you found it. Yeah, that's rough on trees. So this was this morning off of a live oak tree, and as you see, a big difference in the leaf size. I've had some people ask if this was olive because the leaves kind of reduce that much.
So do you have you defoliated that during mid-season?
I do. For years, I did not ever defoliate a live oak because it only defoliates itself once a year. Right. Why would I do that? Right. I brought that live oak down to the Ladybird Wildflower Center. Our club was giving a native trees display, and it stayed for 3 months. And somehow it must have had moisture. It got powdery mildew. And somebody went down there and clipped all the leaves and defoliated my tree. And I thought, did you just kill my live oak? No, it came back this is years and years ago, came back so much better, and it got rid of the powdery mildew and all those little galls and things that are on there. So it's not a problem to do that. So, do it earlier in the year rather than too much late.
When you did it, did the leaves come back normal, or did they have points on it like a holly?
They'll come to, so live oaks, as he was talking about here, have 2 forms of leaves, much like our junipers. So you have immature foliage junipers that have the little spikes that are mean. They'll give you a rash on your hands. And then mature foliage juniper has the rope. Same thing with the live oak. When it's a immature form of the leaf, it'll have that holly spike. When you first collect a tree, it'll probably get full of those little holly spikes because it's saying, don't chew on me, I'm trying to grow. As it matures, as it slows down, as you build ramification, it'll lose all of that, and it'll just be this nice little lance shape. So, yes.
So that one on the end is a live oak?
This is a live oak, yes. That was growing in a neighbor's yard, and she didn't want it any longer. It was down in the hedgerow, and was probably about this tall. She kept turning it into a big lollipop, and she told me she had a bonsai for me, but the bonsai was up here, and I thought, so dig it out, chop it down. But it was a nice little, chunk of material to work with, and they bark up really well when you put them in the pot too. So they'll start getting that. That's a very good question. I don't have the answer for, but it's probably about 8 years, 9 years, something like that. Yeah. Ash juniper is another one that's a very misunderstood species. As we were talking about, a lot of people think they're an invasive. They're actually not. That is a long, interesting discussion that involves the cattle industry and land barons and people who want to be able to do with their land what they want to versus ecologists wanting to have habitat for endangered species and stuff like that. There's a few birds that only use the ash juniper. Anyway, that doesn't matter. We use the ash juniper for bonsai. There's also, I could probably do an entire 2-hour talk about how to collect ash juniper because it is a pain in the rear. And when I first joined the Austin Bonsai Society 20 years ago, they told me don't do it, they won't survive, don't mess with them. But we hadn't been playing with enough of them. We had a couple people in the club who had been collecting them, and then it really ramped up a couple years after I had been there, and then we collaborated with Dallas, and anyhow. They're totally collectible. They need to be in the right area, not locked into roots or rocks, because then you just end up with a dead tree. But you end up with great twists and movements and all sorts of things if you can find them in the right area. So, again, I kind of... The junipers? If you put them in an open draining mix and you have them out in full sun, I've found you really almost can't overwater them. What most people do is they underwater them. So you have a tree that starts producing that spiky foliage, it's unhappy, there's something happening. Move it into more sun, check it for mites, check it for bugs, or there may be a core down in the middle of it that's drying out. On mine, they love water. I mean, they're so happy when I drench them. They're one of the happiest watered. Those and the Wisach. Yeah, love. So, and that's the canary in the minefield. That'll tell me when anything else is dry because this is the weepy one. But yeah, junipers. The problem with them, of course, is you don't know they're dead until a month after. So. Something you did weeks ago is now causing their demise now, so. Do you have ash junipers around San Antonio? Yeah. Okay, I thought so, but they start to kind of thin out the further south we go, so.
They like to be watered in the summer, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
The
A friend of mine years ago who had great luck with ash junipers said water the foliage twice as much as you water the roots and keep the roots watered. So he'd go out and just mist or spray out, the foliage all the time. And
Jack Rice recommends after collecting, you only mist the foliage for like 5 to 6 months. Then you actually start watering, and that has been successful.
That's not what I do, but if it works for him, that's great. Well, just sort of as a brief, when you collect them, you have to get an intact root plug, basically. And my mistake for years was being a little too rough with it and having this, you say root ball, but really you don't need a ball. You cut it sort of flat down here at the bottom. It's like a cork. My problem was having it break, having air get introduced in here or having the roots break off. So when I collect it, it is shrink wrapped down into this hardened ball, for lack of a better word.
Rocks and all.
Rocks and all, weeds and all. Anything that's in there gets to live there because I just want it to live once it's home. And then it's put into a very slightly larger container with bonsai mix at the bottom and the sides. And I water the hell out of the bonsai mix. I don't water the center as much, but the center is usually like caliche or some sort of like really moisture retentive clay that's growing in. But I'll still water that twice a week, maybe once a week, depending on the heat and the temperature and what's going on. I can't imagine keeping it just dry as a root system and only work. I mean, it depends on your yard, it depends on your shade, it depends on a whole bunch of stuff.
When we water the foliage or spray the foliage, it does drip down in the soil, so it's not that we're not keeping it.
Right.
But I had no luck until I did Jack's one type of.
If it works,
and
that's
now
great.
I went from 40% up to 80 to 90%.
That's great. Does he collect the whole ball like I'm talking about too, or a whole different method? I wish he was here tonight.
We are not as meticulous as I know you are.
Okay.
Yeah. We do try to get the native soil that it's in and keep it in there.
Because if I've tried to collect with a pick and I get this raggedy thing, the success rate's really low on that. So, Karen?
I just wanted to say I'm kind of still thinking that the misting is very important because you told me that first year that we went to collect them that the misting is really important. So I logged that, but I kind of ignored the not watering part. So mine get misted and watered all over everything. And I think the mystic is the key thing, because mine did great. Like, I think you told me like only 1 of 5 will survive, so you get a whole bunch.
Well, as the roots are trying to take on, if you can keep moisture in the tops, you know, that's the key.
So I think the mystic is the secret rather than the not watering, because mine get watered and they're fine.
Bill Cody, who is the big collector of ash junipers in Austin, he wrote a book on collecting ash juniper. He built himself a mist house, or a fog house, he called it. Yeah, so it was a plywood structure with a thing open in the center with plastic over it, and it would just fog inside, and he would leave it there for 6 months, or I forget how long. Fantastic success rate. He ended up with some fantastic specimens. Yeah. So I think misting is great in general, especially for, especially for junipers. Hey.
It was in LSBF newsletter one year.
All right.
A couple years, I believe.
So, I'm going to roll on down. Texas persimmon, which is another beloved species in Central Texas. I had one persimmon, which I sacrificed for the club on my bonsai left, and then that other piece was from a not bonsai, but it just goes to show great fruit that's in scale, little fuzzy black fruit. The bark, well, it doesn't really have bark, the trunk is this nice slippery, real thin barked, I guess you could say, that runs between grays and pinks, sometimes a little bit of greens. Small little fuzzy leaves. You can see a whole bunch of fruit on this. In fact, that's the tree I took that one from. But to me, the most interesting feature of this tree is the deadwood. It will not heal over big wounds. It won't even heal over small wounds very well. But what happens is the deadwood oxidizes black. So it's a wonderful, weird occurrence. It's almost like it's been burned and charred. And to have a fruit tree that's like that, that reminds me of the flowering ume trees in Japan that have the deadwood in them that, you know, just kind of similarities, at least in the work. Netleaf hackberry. I know you guys have these down here because I collected that one in San Antonio. And where is it? I just collected one this morning. Yep, there it is. The difference between that and the regular southern hackberry is the texture of the leaves. You can kind of see them a little bit in the picture here, but basically they kind of have a raised section with recessed veining. It's also much rougher. You can open that up and feel them. Not quite like an anaqua, but a roughed leaf tree as well. Let's go on to the next, but different species. So, Celt reticulata.
About halfway through, we can take a break. We can still raffle tickets and make some announcements.
Happy to. Give me a high sign when it's about time, because I don't have a watch.
Oh, okay.
Are we there?
Yeah, we're there, the meeting is finished. No. All right, so we have to be out of here at 8:30.
Oh, see, I didn't
It is
know.
now 7:15.
Well, we're going to rock
right,
through
so-
some more stuff then.
So we've got time, but when you're about halfway through, we're going to stop. I'm going to pick up stuff. I've got
Okay.
some more announcements to make. So raffle tickets.
Keep me on time because I didn't bring a watch.
All right. Well, when do you think you're about halfway done? I mean, you got an hour and 15 minutes. What do you want to do?
We're going to rock it through. We're going to see what we do.
Got it. All right. So I'm going to stop you, and then in 20 minutes, I'm stopping you.
Okay, that works. Vines work fantastic as bonsai. Not a lot of people give them enough credence, but our native Virginia creeper, you have this great reddish orange foliage in the fall, and it's a long-lived species that makes a woody trunk, and it's common, and you find it growing on houses and trees and all sorts of things. I'm pretty sure you guys have the agarita that we have up in Austin as well. Very common, very stickery. A lot of people hate them. I think they're great though. The bees love them. And they have edible fruit, the little red fruits as well. Fantastic plant. It is related to kind of an offshoot related to Nandina actually. So it's not a bush, it's more of a cane. And in its native world, it doesn't necessarily want to branch. So you'll find them that come down from a clump, and it makes a big arc and goes down like this, and another one, and it just looks like a big wig sitting out in the landscape. And so if you find one that actually has old trunking branching to it, you have a special plant. So yeah, one to consider.
Do you keep that in regular bonsai soil?
I do. Yeah, most of them are in just my regular mix. A little bit of change here and there if I need something with more moisture or not. Kidney wood. That is one that more people should grow because of the tiny little leaves, and the flowers are nice, but give it a smell. That's my thing about that. It kind of smells like asphalt. It smells like creosote. And if you don't get the smell, crush it with little leaves and you'll find it. So I've never liked working with them because of the smell, but I think it's a fantastic species. And they get this, oh, they do, yeah. And it gets this rippling in the trunk with little live vein and dead vein back and forth, kind of like a juniper will. Yeah. Question?
Joey, a lot of these that you're showing us are the ones you've dug up?
Yes.
Or have you gotten these from nurseries? Would you find any of these species in nurseries at all?
You can, but they're mostly small, grown for a landscape, so it just looks like a stick with a, you can do that. It's a longer process.
They won't be as mature as big.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. If you get those to practice on and figure out if they're going to be happy in your yard, but if you want something that looks old, you have to go find something old. Yeah. Never skip a club dig. Now, you guys have club digs. Never skip a dig. Our local elbow bush, the Forestiera pubescens. Austin is lousy with this. It's great. It's a little drop leaf. I'll talk about this one in a minute. This is the South Texas version of it. It's the first tree that comes out in small shrub in the springtime with yellow flowers all over. And the strange thing about it is as it grows at right angles, kind of like the Bahama black olive.
Hence the name.
Elbow bush, yeah.
Now, you said that one's a South Texas? Is that a
This one here is. Yes. Yeah. Yep. Possum haw. So we have a deciduous holly up in Austin area. I think you have them here too. It's also north, I think, up into Dallas, so it's kind of got a big range. But it will produce nice berries, and then you also get the naked look, which is opposed to Yopon hollies, which are, leafing out all the time. A strange one that not a lot of people keep is soapberry. So smallish leaves that kind of resemble maybe a pecan. And then it makes an interesting fruit where it's this sort of yellow translucent berry with a black seed in the center of it. Looks really wild. And it gets good fall color as well. I know you have those around here. Gumbamelia, all over Austin. Probably have it here, but I found out recently it's endangered in the wild. So you don't find them very often. This one a friend of mine actually collected, and that's how I ended up wrangling it into a pot. But I have one growing in the backyard as well, so I don't know how endangered they actually are. They have little spines on the ends of all the growing tips, so they're kind of like some of the fruit trees that, they'll have little spikes like a crabapple sometimes. Texas mock orange is another one of the vining, kind of caning species. And it produces a nice big trunk, and there's different varieties of that aren't, the Philadelphus that aren't from Texas that you'll see pictures that other people have. But it does an abundance of flowers and also has a nice small leaf. That was a urban collected deal. Mustang grape. Nice old thick trunks. In fact, we did a Mustang grape dig here. Kevin, I think, set it up. Somebody set it up. Was it Jay? Yeah.
We went down to that.
Yep. Was it ranch?
The vineyard.
Yeah. Well, no, that was a different grape dig, but
That was,
Champagner grapes. Yeah. Lost my last one in the freeze of 21, but
How long did yours last?
that last one, freeze of 21.
You know why they let us dig them? They developed a fungus down there. As soon as you move them away from the coast, they survive really good.
Did they?
That's what I found out. There's an article in the Texas Monthly.
collected ones, I gave them away, but I snuck some grapes,
Yeah,
and I planted them, and now I have
babies.
6 little baby buds, just for grapes.
I have one baby off mine as well, so the lineage continues. And then we have what's called a fox grape. It took me a while to look this one up. It makes sort of a little gelatinous, sort of white-colored fruit that I don't think is edible. And then this is a bonsai that I call monkey butt, because, you know.
So you've heard of the muscatine grape?
Yes, yeah. There's muscadine, and then there is mustang.
Yes.
Uh,
Tell me the difference.
The only thing I know is around us we have mustang. I don't have muscadine.
Underneath the leaves of a mustang, it's got the furry.
Mm-hmm.
The muscatine or muscatane is not.
Okay, so
That's the only difference.
check your leaves
But
to
they
see what you
are
have.
different species.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Species.
There's also supposed to be a difference in the amount of indentations as well between the two species, but I haven't had one to compare, so, you know. I'll work my way through every tree eventually, but I just haven't done it yet.
I got some down there you can go in.
Okay, here's two that I don't have. The Blanco crabapple. We have a native crabapple to Texas. And then a Mexican plum, and this is in the collection of Chuck Ware. In fact, I think he still has that down there. As a matter of fact, on my trick-or-treating trip this morning, I got some Mexican plum to show people. So there's a piece of the branch, and there was a little bit of the fruit.
Joey,
Yes.
on the Blanco crabapple,
Uh-huh.
I've had a lot of problems with them seeming to get a blight, and in like 2 or 3 days they're gone. Any
I think a lot of fruit trees are real prone to every disease and every bug that's in existence.
Same thing, what do they call it, red cedar or cedar rust?
Cedar apple rust, yeah. I mean, it's possible.
Is it orange? No, it just goes from looking like that to dead.
You know, the old school thing that they use that's been around for 150 years is lime sulfur.
Yeah.
It's a fungicide, insecticide, miticide.
But you want to use it dormant though.
It's
Yeah.
a multi-purpose. But you start using it, it's like
Yeah.
yes, it's a dormant spray also. And
You-
it will prevent blight and fungus. That's old school.
I haven't personally had one of these. I haven't had these problems. I have other crab apples, but you might have to become friendly with the fungicide the same way that when you have junipers, you have to get that miticide out there to keep the mites. So.
I've got both in my yard. The Blanco crabapple was, they said even before we got here, they said it probably wasn't a common tree. And then when we wiped out all the predators, the deer population, and
Oh, yeah.
deer loved it. Your Blanco crabapples. They're great in the ground. I've got nurseries on backwater for the seeds. But they're hard with buggers to get a hold of. And when you clean the seed, you got to do clean them in the fall,
Stratify.
stratify them in your refrigerator, pop them in the spring, and poof.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you send a lot of leaders, so you'll get suckers at the bottom with a bunch of cats.
I think all crab apples do that.
Mexican plum, fantastic. I collect the fruit just before Thanksgiving. Same thing, clean them, stratify them, guaranteed they're gonna pop.
Yeah. Yeah, both are easy to collect if you find one that you can, like I've got this one that's in front of an endodontist that my father had to go to, and I'm like, that's a Mexican plum. And so now I can harvest a little bit.
In the wild, you're gonna find the Mexican plum will be the first tree blooming in spring. Beautiful.
Yeah, white.
blossoms.
Yeah. And it has this great dark, almost black, rough bark that's just fantastic.
They do like a tiger striking. And then as they get older, they get a real gnarly bark.
So let's move to West Texas, Big Bend area. There we have smaller oaks. There's the escarpment live oak. This was in the TTSBE collection collected by Bill Cody. Wolfberry, which you also find in South Texas. But the wolfberry, the lyceum is actually, that's our Texas version of goji berry, if anybody has tried a goji berry shake. The little berries are edible, And it looks very similar to the Forestiera from South Texas. I've collected a few of these thinking it was that, and you know, you check the fruit and the flowers later, so you get little surprises. But this one here, as it grows, it basically grows kind of in a long weeping sort of form. So training it into a weeping tree seemed to be a good idea for that. Desert broom, the Baccharis. Has anybody grown a Baccharis as a bonsai? Interesting species. They have little tiny leaves. They make little tiny flowers. There's one that was growing along a creek in the neighborhood I collected this morning. They take to wiring pretty well. They'll develop a nice rugged trunk. The only problem is they're very likely to drop branches, so you have to kind of baby it a little bit. They'll kill off sections of themselves because it's not a very long-lived tree. But it's a fun plant, and you can find them along roadways and creek beds and all kinds of things. Creosote bush is not one that I've ever tried, but I have a friend, or had a friend online who had put one in a show, so I thought, you know what, we have them out there. You can bonsai it. I'm going to stick a picture of it up there.
When you cut them, doesn't it grow bad like a mesquite wood?
The creosote?
Yeah.
I've never had one, so I don't know, but most likely, and probably the smell is probably kind of like the kidney wood, I imagine, so. Yeah. So out there you also have the Monterey oak, Quercus polymorpha, I can't speak tonight. Polymorpha meaning that the leaf changes shape and size. So sometimes you'll see them that'll have a wavery pattern, sometimes they'll be a more pointed, sometimes they'll be a rounded. That's, obviously most of these are not the best bonsai subjects, but I put them there as an example. And sometimes I even have better ones, but this is, yeah. So then we get into something a little stranger. There is a triangle cactus, and this is one of them as well. How many people here, because I have to take a poll, do not think that cactus can be bonsai? Wow, first club that nobody says that. Oh, Hattie, all right. No, that's cool, because there's a big raging thing about Portulacaria, and it's like, can that even be a bonsai because it's a succulent, Sure. My personal thing is, watch me do it, because I'm going to play with them, And the definition of tree is also plastic, so it always changes depending on where you are. The Japanese definition of what they had for tree for bonsai does not include aerial rooted ficus that came from Southeast Asia, Hawaii, places like that. They would never consider that, or our bald cypress with these extended roots that come down like that. In Mexico, you find a Pachyceras that looks basically like this. It is their version of a tree. Nothing else grows up and above them, and you can find pictures all over online of people standing below, imagine little people standing below something like this, or cattle, or whatever else. And so I thought, well, if we can work it like bonsai, if you can prune it, if you can change the shape, if it's not one form like a banana plant or something, you can't really do much with that. Play with it, find some sort of a way to make tree out of it. Why not? So anyhow, that was a fun one. And then when I found out that it's actually native to West Texas, that was even better. One-seed juniper, we're seeing a lot more of these now. Years ago, nobody ever heard of a one-seed juniper. This one is Mark Bynum. There's a couple of them in the Austin Club now, and I think Bjorn has a couple, and maybe Ryan has one now at this point, Ryan Neal. But most of them you see have these fins. They're collecting the very, very old ones, or they're likely to create this deadwood fin like you used to see with the old California junipers. I have a feeling they'll probably collect out a lot of those really old ones at some point. I don't know where they're doing it, but for now it's kind of nice to see. Redberry juniper, as the name, it actually has little red berries, and this one had some fruit that I don't see in the picture, but they were there. Brandon Baldoff from our club collects those. The odd thing about those little guys is they backbud like crazy. They don't act like a juniper. So you will always have these little suckering from the trunk, from branches. You don't necessarily have to treat it completely like a juniper. It's a little broadleafy. Never had one myself, haven't played with them. But
Almost looks like Juniperus pina colada.
Pina colada. The Anacacha orchid, the Bauhinia. We were talking about that, Alfred and I. And I really love this tree. It died in the freeze in 21 as well. But they have little tiny orchid-like flowers. It's called an orchid tree. And the leaves look like a ginkgo tree if the ginkgo leaf looked like a butterfly. So it's this split leaf, and each one looks like a little tiny butterfly. It's just a fantastic plant.
Those are native of the Uvalde area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really rare tree.
Yeah.
Its name in Spanish is pato de toro because it looks like a bull's, it looks like cow's hoof.
Oh, yeah.
Doc-
And there are two color varieties.
Huh.
There's a white form and a pink form. Just the guy who brought them, the American naturalist who went into Local Mexico and collected them,
Yeah.
down in Mexico, not even in pits, occasionally you'd see a white. So we thought, the white is the rare one. He collected and brought only the white for propagation in the United States. I have one nursery said, I'm the fifth person you know who has the pink one in San Antonio.
So everybody knows where to get one now.
Yeah.
I've got about 3 dozen propagated this year.
That's great. Yeah, I love them, but you don't see them very often. You don't see them as bonsai very often. They also are very slow to thicken up. So if you're starting from seed, you're going to in for a very long haul, at least. Yeah. If you can find one that's already grown out, or if you can collect one, fingers crossed.
And every now and then you throw it more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mine are 3 of them together. They're 15-foot tall, and the trunks are very big.
Yeah. They like to shoot. They don't like to put out this way. Another one out that direction, and also in South Texas, is what they call the Mexican olive, the cordia, and much larger leaves. I mean, like maybe this size. I've only had one briefly in my garden as I cared for it from somebody else, so I enjoyed it, and then it went back to them. So it wasn't for very long, and I haven't actually owned one yet, but I thought it was a fascinating species, and it had nice rough bark as a small little plant. But they don't reduce well, and I think as a larger, bonsai, it would probably do best. With the opportunity, I'd collect one and, figure that out. A couple other ones in West Texas, Hinkley oak. I ended up getting this one from the Wards, Terry Ward, which, by the way, if people don't know, Terry Ward passed away last year, 2022, and Sheila just passed away last week. So, yes. Yes. Very sad, and they were going to be missed. But they're what now?
The big influence in Texas bonsai.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, one of their big things that they did was to travel out to West Texas, and they picked up this Hinkley oak as just a little seedling from the Chihuahua Desert Research Institute, and it is critically endangered in the wild. I looked up all this stuff. I didn't know anything about it. Tiny little place that's growing, between two mountains, and they collect seeds and they sell them, for a fundraiser. So anyway, I have this now very rare tree that I'm going to be trying to turn into a bonsai very carefully, and we're going to see what happens. But so far, if I treat it like a live oak, it seems just as happy. So we're going with that. And then out there, I've never had one of these, but I've heard about them, the alligator juniper. They have this bark. It's not a pine tree. This bark that is in little, Lego segments. And apparently they bark up pretty quickly, but I don't know anybody that actually has a bonsai of them yet. North Texas Plains. Should we take a little break for raffle tickets?
Yes, we will.
All right, so we'll jump back into our tour of Texas trees. That's what it should have been named.
Yeah. Tour of Texas trees.
Tour of Texas trees. Hello. So, we're going north. We're start back up in the North Texas Plains. Hello.
Quiet down.
Where you find less, if it's possible, even less of the conifers than we have in the Austin area, and much, much more of the big plains trees, which are mostly broadleaf trees. So, bur oak. It's an unusual species for bonsai, but it does remarkably well. Pretty common tree, but you don't see anybody that uses them because they imagine the leaves are that big. But as a bonsai, you can get them like this. And there's one of the little acorns in there of why they call it a bur oak. The little one was off my bonsai, and this was off of a landscape tree that I collected this morning. They're not all that large, but I was like, I need a comparison size. Rough, craggy bark, they do not ramify very well. They have longer internodes. You're going to have to get a larger tree if you want to play with one of those. But like everything else that we talk about, if you get a good trunk, give it a shot. You know, what do you have to lose? We have 2 trees in Texas that we call red oaks. The true red oak. We generally call it, there's probably more than 2, but as I've heard them regularly called. So the Quercus bucklei is the one that's actually truly called the red oak. And it generally has the reddest, brightest foliage. It's a little bit rusty in the photograph, but it was the best fall foliage color that I had on this one. The other one is the Shumard oak, which people also refer to as a red oak because it has a nice red color. But if you notice, the leaves can be similar because they have a wavy edge, but this one has a very distinctive coin sort of waves. This one has a little bit more of a loopy, rounded edge. The Shumard oak tends to like a little bit more moisture, so you find them if you're going to collect them like down in riverbeds or valleys or creek areas. The red oak you're going to find in more dry areas, a little bit rocky, sort of up the hill, down the hill. So both pretty trees.
Is that red oak yours?
Yes, everything in here is mine except the ones that are listed, yes. So, and I did not collect this eastern red cedar. It's just out of my range. But, so as we have ash junipers around Austin and San Antonio area, you go up to the Dallas area and they have more of the eastern red cedar, which extends all the way up on the east coast. We don't have them in Austin for some reason. There must be a boundary line. I'm not sure where that falls. But I've seen the 2 together. They're very similar. I'm not sure I could tell one apart because I haven't had one. But I know they collect them in Dallas. The true winged elm, who was talking about? Alfred, I think, also is in the Dallas area, Olma salata. And it looks an awful lot like our cedar elm, but the difference that I've been able to find is the cedar elm will make like a flat wings with the stem in the middle. The winged elm itself will actually put them on like the 4 quadrants. So you'll get a lot more winging. You'll get the wings on all 4 quadrants. So cedar elm usually is in a kind of a 2-dimensional thing. The winged elm is more 3D. It's not 100%. I've seen cedar elms also make, all the way around. But generally, that's one of the ways you can tell them apart. There's also a difference in the leaf shape. Cedar elms tend to be a little bit rounder, and winged elms are a little bit pointier, but there's variations. So that if you live around Dallas, you're more likely to see a winged elm. If you're down by us in Austin, cedar elm. Eastern redbud, however, pretty much found throughout the state, but it's really found up in the north area, so I stuck it up there. Not a lot of people use that as bonsai because they generally, again, think of the leaves about this size, but bonsai can be like that. So why not? If you find a trunk, give it a shot. Kind of like, That has been my eternal frustration is I've never had flowers in a pot. I keep trying, but I've never had it flower in a pot. But the little heart-shaped leaves are nice, and it's generally a weed tree that grows in someone's yard or along their driveway, and someone says, please get this out, and I say, okay. Have shovel, will travel. Cottonwood. Does anybody have a cottonwood as a bonsai? I don't know anybody that has one. This one has a story which I'll tell really quickly after I show you. Most people think of cottonwood, but there's cottonwood as bonsai. So any tree that has a radical size difference from large to small, you can always do leaf reduction and you can have a much tinier leaf. So people see large leaves. Some plants won't reduce. Sycamore doesn't reduce very well. Cottonwood does, and so does redbud. Cottonwood though. So I got a call from one of the members of the Austin Bonsai who had moved to Gonzales, not too far from here. And he was wondering if I've ever done a cottonwood as bonsai. And I said, no. He said, would you be interested in one? I have one to give you. I said, okay. And he told me the story about this one. So the city of San Antonio gave to the city of Gonzales 32 trees that were propagated off of the plants from the Alamo. So this one was a branch cutting from the big cottonwood above the Garrison building. I haven't been down to see that yet, but I want to. And so they donated them to the city of Gonzales to build an arboretum, a tree park, to commemorate the 32 people from Gonzales who were sent to the Alamo to fight when the big battle happened. So it was this whole kind of two-city thing. Being a small town, the city of Gonzales fell through the cracks. Trees started dying. We don't have the land. What are we going to do? So they just ended up with a few trees here and there, and my friend got this one and called me. But the weird thing about this is I've had relatives in Texas forever, and there was a Joey McCoy who lived in Gonzales who was one of the 32 people who went to the Alamo and died there. And now this is a tree commemorating one of the people who went from that town. And I'm just like, what other bonsai person should have that tree? And now there's a lot of pressure. I got to keep this thing alive. It can't die because there's like the whole story behind it. But when I first got it, it had huge leaves like this and was a big tall thing. And I've never used cottonwood before. I don't know how they're supposed to work as bonsai, but populous. So it's in the poplar family. It works really well as bonsai. It really likes water. In the summertime, I'll put a pan about down to here and just keep it full of water. Otherwise, it gets a little bit too thirsty. So anyway, never thought cottonwood would work, but here I am.
How did you get it to take root in these soils?
How did I what?
How did you get it to take root?
That was all them. So they did the propagation, and they grew it out, and then they donated it. And so that wasn't on me, that was on them. I'm sure there's a technique, but I haven't tried it either.
From what I understand, poplar's almost a weed,
It is.
so pretty much getting it ground is going to take root, almost like a willow.
It might be like a willow where you can actually cut it and put it in water and it'll root. I haven't tried that, so I don't know. But it should be kind of fun to play with, and it's got a big chunky trunk. Anyway, so northern hackberry, we have the Celtis occidentalis up there. There's a little bit of difference between what we have in Austin and what they have up in the northern area. I haven't seen those there, and I've been on some digs in San Antonio, and I haven't seen them here either, so there must be a temperature change. But in Texas, there's another hackberry you can collect. So let's go ahead and move the clock around to East Texas, down the Big Thicket. As we change the different landscapes, we keep changing the different trees. So we start, the big one there, of course, is bald cypress, Taxodium distichum. And this is a little guy that I brought here, and that's another one there. As you can see, they can have different forms, they can have different trunks. You generally don't see them as a cascade, but they're more of an upright tree. The other one in the area is Taxodium ascens, which is the pond cypress. There's people that use bald and pond interchangeably, and in Europe they all say pond cypress for some reason that I've talked to. And I keep asking them, is this the botanical you mean? And no, so anyway, common names are kind of funny sometimes. The pond cypress tend to be a little bit less flared. Bald cypress can get much more of a flare. But the big difference is the bald cypress, its name in Japanese is robe of feathers, and the leaves look like feathers. So it's a vein with on one side and on the other side, so little bitty leaflets. The pond cypress, kind of like our elm discussion, we'll have on both sides this way, but we'll also have leaflets that go up and down. So it's a little bit of a messier tree, a little more of a rope of foliage that kind of goes all the way around. In person, there's a difference. Yes, yes?
What kind of substrate do you use for Alzheimer's?
What is it, what now?
Substrate, what soil do you use?
I pretty much use the same substrate for all my trees. It's an inorganic mix. It's mostly volcanic based. And sometimes with things like bald cypress, I'll throw in like a handful of bark or something. It's a little more water retentive just because I know they're, water lovers. But I will stick my bald cypress during the summer, like especially this summer, in a tub of water. And it just sits there and wicks all summer long. As a matter of fact, I had an old one that used to belong to Donna, who I was hoping she was going to be here tonight, but she's not here. And it was doing very poorly during the summer. It's an old bald cypress, and I just stuck it in this deep thing of water, and it's finally come out with nice bright green leaves again. So that's a great way to refresh plants. So
How long do you leave it in the water? The example you just gave.
I leave it in there all when we're like
A little bit of water or totally submerged?
usually a little bit. So usually I'll put maybe up to here so that it's constantly wicking. The one I was just talking about that was sick, I totally submerged the base, maybe under 2 or 3 inches of water.
How long?
All summer.
You had it submerged all summer?
Yep. In fact, it's actually,
Or with fish emulsion or other stuff?
with what now?
Any organic?
No, just water, yeah. It had some extended release fertilizer on it when I put it in, but it's just been left to its own devices. It's still in there, as a matter of fact. I need to take it out now because we have cooler weather. But they can stay submerged in the hot part of the year. Don't do that during the winter because you could introduce other problems. Water elm, another one I've never had. That one belongs to Alan Walker in Shreveport, I believe as he is. And I think that was at one of the Houston conventions. And then the parsley hawthorn, also haven't had one of those, but down around the Houston area, they get these interesting plants that I have never experienced. I need to go on one of their digs. But they're quite lovely. And totally different bark. You don't have any of the cedar elm look on, well, of course it's planera, it's not even ulmus. But anyhow, I include them because they're beautiful examples, and a couple of other ones. Sweet gum. I have one of those that's not a bonsai yet, but TTSPE inherited this one from Audrey Lanier. And then red maple, which is Acer rubrum, which is our native sort of large leaf maple, also reduces, probably similar to some of these other ones I've showed you, but same issue with the red bud and some of the other ones. You're going to have larger internodes, even if you can get the leaves to reduce down. So you're never going to have a Japanese maple look or trident maple look with something like that, but that's okay. It's a different species. It's a different plant. Honey locust. I wanted to bring that one today. I call it Bigfoot because it kind of looks like a foot. So Gladitia. That's the one with the thorns. That is a fantastic tree. So it grows out thorns that are about 3 inches long, and on those thorns it grows out other thorns sideways, and on the ends of those it's another little thorn sideways. So it's like this thicket of thorns. And I dug that in Burton, Texas, kind of going out towards A&M area. And it has a compound leaf, and it hasn't flowered or fruited for me yet, but I've just really been enjoying it. You have to be very careful when you wire it, but then I have a lot of ones that you have to be very careful with. Yopon holly. So most people are familiar with the dwarf Yopon holly, or as somebody was talking about, different varieties that are planted in the landscape. And I think I counted up 16 different cultivars that people use, from itty bitty to maybe about my height or so. The full-blood native Yopon holly is a tree. This is one that came from a lady's front yard, and I mean, the base is probably about yay big, and it was 2 stories high, and it was just straight as can be. And I was there to dig crepe myrtles, but I thought I'll get that too. This became very interesting though, because, and I don't have a picture of it, at least it's not in this one, or maybe they are, but I can't see. They have the red berries, whereas the dwarf yaupons do not, because they're clones of the male plant. So you get a little more variety with the native yaupon. A little bit larger leaves, a little bit larger internode, so again, a larger tree, but about the same care as a dwarf yaupon. Shortleaf pine. So everyone does like the Japanese pines, but we have native pines. So this is Pinus echinata. I can't say my words tonight. Where's that water? And it's grown in sort of East Texas and then on up to Virginia, I believe. They're timber trees. And I first learned about these when a lady in Austin contacted the Austin Bonsai Society because there was a bag that was delivered to her home that was supposed to be in a tree farm in Arkansas. And it was 500 little seedling, and they were 1 year old and they're about this tall. And so in the club, we all went there, we took a handful. And I've been, playing with them and wiring them, and I didn't know what they were at first, except the little label that was on the outside. They don't act like a Japanese black pine where you have 1 or 2 flushes. They are a multi-flush plant, so this end will start to grow and it'll just kind of keep growing instead of candling up. So you have to treat it more like a cedar, the cedrus family, where you pinch them back multiple times in the year. It never quite greens up into a dark green. It's a little bit yellow, no matter what I've done, no matter what I've changed for the different species. But this one, the top is looking a little bit more yellow than normal, so something may have happened during summertime on it. The loblolly pine, which is all over East Austin, and then all the way out to, or east of Austin, all the way out to Houston, people don't use them because they have large leaves, 6-inch, needles or so, 8-inch needles. But David Schlesser has a very good specimen, and Alex Leong from the Houston Club is actually giving a workshop on these at the next convention. So I look forward to seeing that.
So what do people do? Just trim them like bangs, or do they use it all? How do we get 6 inches down?
Some people cut, but I think it's more in the technique. See, I haven't had a loblolly yet, but I believe it's in the technique of when you cut, kind of like in black pine. So black pine needles are generally about 3 inches long, but you can get them down to about 1 inch, depending on what time of year you trim them, so you don't give them enough time before winter hits to extend out. They used to say to prune them in June, and then it went to 4th of July to prune back the candles. But if you want them even tinier, you wait until the beginning of August. So you just kind of keep pushing that back a little bit, and you give it less growing time, and you get the needles to reduce. Also, the denser the branches, the more ramification, the more that the resources of the tree are split, and it'll naturally start producing smaller foliage. And that's good with any tree, but I imagine with the pines too. I think Alex is going to give us all of his secrets next year, so I look forward to learning about them. Red mulberry. So we have a native mulberry tree. Not a great example of one, but one. And edible fruit. Reduces the leaves really nicely. And then willow. We have in the Austin area black willow. So this was actually growing down along a creek bed of mine, and I thought I had changed out the picture when it was in a bonsai pot, but I guess I didn't do that. I fought water moccasins for that tree. My heart was racing, I can't even tell you, digging that thing up out of the creek. But it was, it was a flooded area, and a rock had overturned, and it was leaning down into the creek water, and I thought, they're going to dig this thing out. Mine, so.
Does it fill up with roots real quickly?
It does, yeah. You have to repot that every year. You probably should do it like twice a year. It's like some ficus. They like to be kept wet, as the name would probably imply, willow. And then they also don't like shade, so you have to put them out in the juniper pine sun. But in the summertime, kind of like the bald cypress, you need to put them into water so they can continually, if it's above 100 degrees, you just can't keep up with the rain. I couldn't keep up with watering them. So, South Texas scrubland. Yeah, can you tell I'm kind of excited to be there right here? We did a club dig down there. We have a club member who owns some property. Is David still here? I think he already took off.
Yes, he's in the meeting.
Oh, okay. So some of this will look probably familiar, and some of the species might look a little familiar to him. And maybe you guys, you've been at club digs down there, yes? Or anyway. Mostly everything down there scratches and bites you, and you have to wear covered everything all the time. The plants, the bugs, the creatures. Anyway, be very careful. The big one in the area is the honey mesquite, which we have all the way over the whole state. It's in much of the United States. But it's a beautiful plant. The problem with it is it has kind of largish leaves, so you need to make a large bonsai. Those will not reduce. Another one, full sun, and it does not like to be shaded. You'll end up dropping branches from. I found it to be kind of a finicky plant. I mean, it's sort of considered a weed. People hate mesquite, or they love mesquite. It's one way or the other, and it's difficult to keep in a pot alive. I've found.
Which one?
The mesquite, the honey mesquite, at least long term. But our native acacia, Acacia farnesiana, the huisach, or huisache as I call it too, which is this little guy with much, much smaller leaves, still wicked thorns though. They seem to love being in a pot, have no problem at all. Little bitty shallow pot that's been in there a long time. This one as well. They're really fairly easy to collect. I don't think I've ever killed one as much as I've, abused a few of them. Very sad, the winter of 21 took that one away, unfortunately, so actually took both of those away. Oh no, that's me, but took this away and that one away, yeah. Yeah, that was me chopping and doing some stuff on that guy. But I stuck the accent person in for scale, so you could see how big it was. Anyway, highly recommend our acacia if people haven't tried it yet. It ramifies pretty well. It has, like I said, tiny leaves, and the cool thing about it, it has these nasty little thorns that everyone seems to hate, which you can see some in there. I don't cut them off. But the first maybe three or probably three leaf sections, 1, 2, 3, are thornless. So as it grows out, if you let this extend out here, you'll get double thorns on every leaf section. But we don't need all that. So you're always cutting it back to the first, couple of nodes anyway, because you want to keep everything tight. So naturally, as you work on it, you're de-thorning it just by pruning. So you end up with, that's the other, besides redbud, my eternal problem is it's never flowered for me. I keep waiting. Maybe I prune it too hard. Maybe it's in a pot. I don't know. We have them in Austin growing around the ground too, so I see them flower there, but I have several in pots, and I haven't seen a flower yet.
Do you defoliate this one, or no, it just reduces by?
No, I haven't. But it has naturally tiny leaves.
Okay.
I've never seen them change from large to small. They're small when they're in the ground.
Okay.
So I don't know if any of these compound leaves like this will reduce much, either the mesquite or the huisache.
I have a acacia that's a cat claw. I
Yes.
don't know what the extension of that is, and mine's slightly bigger, not huge.
Mhm.
But I was just wondering if I'm supposed to do something. I'm not. I'm just.
Generally, those won't reduce in leaf size.
Alrighty.
If you want them smaller, it's a segmented leaf, which that one's asleep now, but if you imagine the stem with the little pieces coming off, you could just cut it in half, so it's not as long. I've done that with wisteria. If you need to take some of the, it's a leaf cutting technique basically. I don't know if you'd want to do that for a show, but because they're going to come back as they were normal anyway, so. So spiny hackberry, who was asking me about spiny hackberry earlier? Yes, you can definitely turn them into bonsai as well. Mm-hmm. And if people haven't, spiny hackberry, you don't think of everything having thorns on it, but a hackberry can have thorns.
Well, I'm not sure what hackberries are growing in, they grow down by the
If it doesn't have thorns, it's not that one. And you'll know, it's mean. Those are mean little thorns. You're welcome to open it up and...
It was either the first one or the second one you showed. I don't know what.
Yeah. You get, in San Antonio, I think you have more of the net leaf hackberry.
Oh, yeah, I think it is.
In Austin, more of the sugarberry or the southern hackberry. But, so I've found this guy to be a great little tree. South Texas, it just bakes in the sun in rock hard ground. However, when you put it in a pot, it really sulks if the root temperature gets hot. So the top can take whatever heat you want, but if you do collect one of these, you're going to have to do some sort of protection of the bottom or taking it into shade. It's amazing how desert-ish plants can be so sensitive once you pot them up. An aqua. How many people here have an aqua? Probably a lot. Yes. An aqua are awesome. The sandpaper tree. My understanding is it was actually used by early settlers to like scour pots. I mean, it is really, really, you're welcome. By the way, these are like scratch and sniff and feel the texture, and anybody that wants to open these up and get in there, you're welcome to. In fact, I'll have something that if you wanted to, you could even taste in a minute, but you may not want to. Anyway, sandpaper tree. The leaves will reduce. They tend to be kind of large, on the large side, but they will reduce nicely. And
15 minutes.
Yeah, we're going to keep going. All right. Great bark, great. I've never seen them flower though. In the wild, you'll see a nice thing of flowers, but in a pot, I've never seen that either.
Mine flowered after the season 21.
In a pot? Did you get a picture? Maybe the only time it ever happens. Maybe you have to stress them out. All right.
I was wondering when.
Texas ebony, yep. Oh, and fragrant mimosa, yeah. So more of the spiny and compound leaf. If you look down at pictures of the scrublands, everything kind of looks like spiny compound leaves. So I didn't bring it with me. I have a bag that I take, it's about this tall, of guidebooks for just for South Texas. We go down there and we're like, what is it? And we start flipping through. Yeah, the fragrant mimosa kind of has a cat claw, sort of like a hooked thing. And yeah, it'll tear you up. If you put your hand in it, it'll rip it out. But pink flowers, little pink flowers, and of course Texas ebony has the cream or white flowers, and theirs are more the straight little point. Larger leaf, that's a little bit smaller leafed. Both great species and long-lived old woody trunks. The retama, or Palo Verde it's also called, which you'll grow up in parking lots. It kind of, I showed this to, unfortunately it also didn't make it for the freeze, but I showed this to a friend of mine and she said it looks like Muppet bonsai, because it looks like those, the Muppets. And after that I was like, I have to have more of these. So I've been on the lookout, but I haven't found another Muppet bonsai since then. But it's deceptive. These look nice and sweet, and what you actually have is like a little stem with little bitty leaflets kind of spaced all the way down. But at the bottom of every one of those leaves and hidden in this fur that you want to pet are little hooks. So you got to be careful with them. Like everything else in South Texas, it bites. Has anybody grown Colima here? Okay, a couple. Colima, which is the xanthoxylum. It's also called, there's not this one, xanthoxylum, and there's one in Austin called toothache tree. Yeah, in fact, we talked about this online, I think, yes. And tickle tongue and a couple of other things. And it's related to the Szechuan peppercorn, which you can get in Chinese restaurants. So, and that kind of makes your tongue tingle and kind of go a little bit numb. So Colima, as the name kind of suggests, smells and actually tastes a little bit like lime. And you can use this to flavor dishes with lime. And it does have thorns, be careful. But you're welcome to smell, taste, whatever you want to do with it. But This one is from the TTSBE collection. I have one that's just not ready for bonsai prime time yet. Difficult plant to collect in my experience. They don't really care for their roots to be messed with unless you get them young and you keep them in a pot. I've collected several largish ones and I haven't made it through that first year. But there's probably something, some little trick. You got to figure out the trick. Anyway, interesting species, interesting family. The Brazil, the blue wood, which is this guy right here, Candalia. I collected that at our Redbird Ranch dig here in San Antonio in 2008. And that was laying on the ground, and it was just like a piece of dead wood with some stuff coming up out of it when it was collected. Really interesting plant. It does have little thorns on it as well, as everything in South Texas seems to have, but also has edible little blackberries. So it's kind of a wonderful plant. I had it in this pot until we had a hailstorm 2 weeks ago in Austin, and hail caught the top and tumbled the whole thing over, and then it got an upgrade into a Sarah Rayner pot. So it's okay now. And then for the weird factor, we have the Tasajillo, which is also called a Christmas cactus, but there's other plants called Christmas cactus, so I usually don't call it that. It'll make little red fruits in the joints of its arms sometime, but it's a Cylindropuntia, which a puntia are prickly pears. So cylindro is just a tube-shaped prickly pear, basically, for lack of a better word. But it's a plant that has a nice woody stem that branches easily, that is long-lived, and is kind of found in abundance in places where people don't want it. Great plant. I wanted to put a caution tape around it though, because my father calls that jumping cactus, because you come up next to it and it'll jump over on you. If you touch it, you will have spines in you. They come out real simple, real easily, and from the cactus into you. But with long tweezers and needle nose pliers, you can wire branches and stuff, so it works. Panalero. So the Forestiera, which is related to the elbow bush in Austin, I showed that one earlier, is this guy. Again, it grows at right angles, little bitty leaves, looks an awful lot like this guy here. When you're in South Texas, everything kind of looks like everything else until you get it home. And you start discovering the differences in them. But nice tree, just not an edible fruit on that one. You'll kill yourself if you try to eat that. The lead tree, which looks like mimosa people have in their yards, no thorns on this guy. And little white puff balls. That actually came up as a weed in another tree that I collected in South Texas, and I was thrilled to get it. So I'll be keeping my eyes open for those in the future. But it thickens up a trunk pretty quick. So I've got 2 of those started. The third type of cypress, the Taxodium species that we have in America, besides bald cypress and pond cypress, is the Montezuma cypress. And it's mostly found in Mexico, but you can find it at the extreme South Texas boot. You'll find them that grow in Texas. This is the tree in Oaxaca called Thule, I think, or something like that, where you've seen pictures online of all the little school children holding hands. It's the widest trunk in the world. It's that species. And it's a little different, a little bit tighter, yeah. And then down there you also, but in Austin as well, probably here as well, you have lantana, which most people think of as more of a shrub or a little herb or a perennial or something, but it can make a very nice bonsai as well. And the very last thing I wanted to mention, with all of our wonderful natives, and we live here, is don't forget the stuff that grows in the cities. And that just is things that are planted and things that are found. So I just kind of put a quick little deal. I wanted to put word out there of, look around in the houses. Here in Central Texas, we have such a turnover of homes that people come in, and we were just talking about willow tree and boxwoods and all sorts of things now that people want out. It's best to do them in the right time of year. But from boxwoods, holly, crepe myrtle, there are at least 4 different types of ligustrums. The Althea Rose of Sharon, fringe flowers are fantastic. Azaleas are kind of hard to come by unless you're in Houston. But even in Austin, pyracantha becomes a weed, you know. And all of these were collected around the state. Even podocarpus, I got one of those in Corpus Christi. So I think that does it. Do we have any questions? All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.